Hi everyone, it's Eileen from Stress Coach Training, and in today's video I'm going to talk about how our beliefs and conditioning from childhood can keep us in the anxiety or stress cycle, anxiety or stress loop. Okay, so every single one of us have a different childhood. And even if we're brought up in the same family, we're all individuals, we all have individual personality traits. Some of us are more resilient to things than others. And even within that family unit, we will experience many things in a different way, or we will have different experiences within that family unit. And then if you take things like our culture, religion, and education, the things that are passed on to us from our family, from our parents, from our grandparents, siblings, and other people around us. We all have different types of, there'll be some things that'll be similar, beliefs and conditionings, but there are other things that can be what we call very distorted. And we all run narratives in our head. We all have stories about events that happen to us. And there's even many things that have happened to us that we actually really push down into the unconscious. And one of the things about the way that the mental mind and brain works is we also have what we call a bottleneck. And there's a bottleneck in relation to memory. And what that means is that when we are in a certain situation, if you can imagine how many things we see and we do every single day, but how many of those things do we actually remember? And lots of times the mind will try and find like another anchor within the mind, something else that's relatable to that situation, to create a correlation and to create like a transmission, right, with something else. It's all these little kind of connection points, like and little pathways, that's the word, right? Now, when we're children, we experience a lot of things for the first time. And when we come into the world, most children spend a lot of time being and just enjoying presence. But in our modern day world, we live such a distracted, busy, and very we're very overstimulated with information and lots of conditioning from, if you even look at things like our media, our computers, our education system, we are very much being constantly exposed to lots of information that can actually be like brainwashing, right? And we don't even realize it. We are being conditioned into a certain way of thinking. We're being programmed, or certain things are trying to program our beliefs, right? And basically in our childhood, it's like we have an imprinting period, a period where our parents can imprint certain beliefs, or certain experiences are more likely to imprint their way into our system, right? And if we have lots of experiences that are very negative or traumatizing, neglectful, many people who have, for example, very abusive parents or have abusive experiences in their childhood find it hard to function in certain ways, or they have a lot of distortions in relation to life because of those beliefs. Now, at that time, they'll take on certain patterns that will keep them, it helps them to survive. But often these patterns are not very healthy when we take them into adulthood. Though some we will naturally adapt and grow out of, but there's many that lie in our unconscious that we do not realise that may be sabotaging aspects of our life. And some of these sabotaging patterns are seen in things like we're always have it being triggered. We may have anger issues, or we may be the type of person that likes to hide our head in the sand. We may, just like to dream and not look at reality. We may have assertive issues, struggle with healthy boundaries, saying no, struggle to put ourselves first when we really need to, struggle to give ourselves the self-care that we need to. There can be situations where people go into lots of self-soothing habits, unhealthy self-soothing habits, like addictions, smoking, working too much, being a bit of a workaholic, all these things. Now, when these things go to the extremes, they can really start playing havoc in our life. And they cause increased anxiety and stress, because basically we've not solved the wounding and the triggers. And triggers are stressors. And when something causes us stress, our body and if it's constant or if it's a lot, it becomes chronic stress. Or if it's anxiety triggers, we've got a lot and it's constant, it becomes chronic anxiety. Both chronic anxiety and chronic stress can really impact not just your health and your well-being, but your mental resilience, your emotional resilience. It can cause you to, for example, have low self-worth, low self-esteem. Now, often these things, there can be already a crack, and that's just magnifying it. But when you're in a constant chronic anxiety or chronic stress state, you may not even realize it, but you're not functioning at the most balanced or optimal level. So you can maybe be exhausted, confused, distracted, overwhelmed, so busy that you do not have time to just stop and relax. And many people today have to rely on something to relax them. And what do I mean by relax? I mean the ability to completely switch off with nothing and just to sit back and completely feel in every muscle of your body completely relaxed. Most people today have to do something. They may rely on alcohol. They may think they're relaxed by watching TV, but that is merely a distraction. That does not relax all the muscles, okay? They struggle just to stop and be quiet and to slow the mind. That's why I believe in stress management. It's one of the reasons I teach. The ability to meditate and the ability to relax, the ability to meditate deeply and the ability to relax deeply. Because if you have these two tools, one of the things that happens is that you naturally become more resilient to stress and anxiety, but you also become much more wiser, calmer, and you get a bigger sense of what's going on. Because when people are stressed and anxious, they are so in the fear cycle, they are so in that constant fear, even if it's small fears, that they don't always see the bigger picture of what's going on. They're just trying to cope. When you're in anxiety or stress response, the body tends to have you just focusing on one aspect. So you're not getting maybe a more rational perspective. You're not often using your intuition and maybe your different senses in the most optimum way to see things from a much calmer perspective. And stress tends to be in a way reactive response, because it kind of, if you think about negative stress is a situation where we find or we perceive it to be something to be negative, to be threatening physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So when we believe within, our mind that we are being threatened, that creates a reactive response in our body, and our body responds so that it can survive that situation. But when we're in a very relaxed and calm state, we are able to detach ourselves from a story that we're constantly telling ourselves that may not be true. We have the ability to be more objective. We have the ability to even override all that and recognize that these things are only thoughts. But the reality is, every single one of us carry beliefs, unconscious beliefs and, conscious beliefs that impact how we respond to anxiety, stress, how we respond to life. Now, even though I've trained in many things that help people tackle certain core beliefs that keep them trapped, and these include CBT, NLP, even things like hypnotherapy, inner child work. But the reality is that there is also an aspect of belief work that it can be a never-ending story. And I believe when you learn how to really meditate and make meditation a daily practice, make it part of your life, you start to be the person that witnesses your thoughts. And when you are more witness to the thoughts, you can tend to catch when your thought process have started to go a certain way. And it becomes much more easier to see where you're getting trapped. And it helps you also recognize when the ego is being threatened. Of course, we're all human, or we're all living a human experience, and we can fall into that trap. And as it is happening, some of us, the more that we meditate, we go, oh, right, okay, I'm falling into that trap again, and that's okay. But the reality is that when we're on the real anxiety and stress response, we're so in it, we're so entangled in it, we don't even see what's going on. And I suppose a big example is family triggers, is when we get triggered by situations and we constantly get caught in that loop. But when we become more detached or observant or witness to that situation, we can start to see it starting to happen and kind of stop it before it gets out of hand or before it actually has happened. So every single one of us have so many different types of beliefs, and things are passed down to us that sometimes don't even make any sense. But it is amazing what belief systems we all have. And what people have got to remember is we don't even realise we have these belief systems until they're brought up to the unconscious. But many belief systems that are formed in childhood, it's the child's perception. So what's happening is the brain is being run on the child's perception, not the adult's perception, until it is addressed or witnessed. Okay, so beliefs can and obviously play a huge part in the anxiety and stress response. But the reality is that we cannot become aware of it unless we slow down, unless we teach people how to relax and to be back into that state of being aware as a baby, as a child, that they spent more of their time. Because the reality is most of us are caught up in this very busy response, which creates absolute havoc in the body with hormones. It creates inflammation, it creates all sorts of challenges to our central nervous system, to our digestive system, when we are constantly in even low levels of chronic anxiety and chronic stress. So I hope that's helped. It's just a good reminder to remind ourselves of how much our beliefs and our conditioning triggers that anxiety, stress, how much things that we carry from our childhood, and how we can learn to override it more. Okay, so it's one of the reasons why, again, I believe things like meditation and relaxation are utmost. I'm all about empowering the client and giving the power over to the person. Bye for now.